Well, hey, go ahead and take out your notes if you're taking notes. I would like to just dive right in. I'm going to call tonight's message Reflex. Reflex. Do you know somebody who, I'm sure we all know somebody, I'll just assume that. We all know somebody that, once in a while likes to flex something they're good at, or flex on maybe a gift that they might have that's just better than you, maybe. We all have that one friend, where or that person that you meet and, you're just getting to know each other and you're like, hey, how you doing? I'm good. Like, oh man, where'd you go to school? I got my associate's degree. I'm super proud of that. But then there's that one friend who's like, oh, that's awesome, man. You got your associates. That's what's up. That's cool. Yeah, I went ahead and got my bachelor's, and just threw a little master's, degree in there. Currently working on my doctorate, no big thing. It's just Tuesday. You're just like, there's that friend that, for me, it was in college. I went to a small Bible college called Central Bible College in Springfield, Missouri. And, I was newer to the faith, and I got to this Bible college. There's a lot of Christians, pastors' kids, missionary kids. And in Christian world, we just make things weirder, and, they're like, oh, what's your name? Where you from? I'm like, man, my name's Juan. I'm from Chicago. This is the church that I'm a part of. And Christians just get weird, Oh, that's awesome, man. I'm from this city, and I'm from this other church. It's a little bit larger than yours. It's pretty cool. It's just the people in your life that like to flex. Or when you're doing like a sport or something, and like I like to go to the gym and play ball. I just have one condition, is that Christian Baker is on my team. You know what I'm saying? Pick and roll, we good. Pick and pop. Usually I'm just waiting. I'm like, Christian, pass the ball. But there's people like in the gym that you play with, and you look and you're like, I don't want to guard them. They're pretty good, or I'll guard this person. But then there's that one player who's always like, yo, man, like, I've been hooping. I grew up playing ball, like I did AAU a couple times and went to college, got a little scholarship. And they're just like telling you about their life that you never asked about. And so it makes me think of this passage in Matthew. There's this group of people who were trying to do what they can to flex on our God, Jesus. And there's this group of folks who they would follow Jesus wherever he went, and all they wanted to do was to stump him. All they wanted to do was to get him to trip up or pause or to just be seen as a liar. They wanted to catch him up in his words. And I love this moment in the book of Matthew, chapter 22. There's these religious groups, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. See, the Sadducees were this religious sect that they would be really strict on Mosaic law. They followed strictly what the law said is what we're going to do and how we're going to live. There's no wiggle room with that. And then you have the Pharisees, and they were like cool, right? Like they were cool, they would like talk to one another, but the Pharisees weren't as strict as the Sadducees, but they would kind of be that strong religious sect that would let a couple things fly. They just had you had more freedom as a Pharisee. But let's look at Matthew 22 about both of these groups. It says this, let's read this together. It says, but when the Pharisees, right, we just talked about them, when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, and when he says he, Matthew's referring to Jesus, it says that they gathered together. You ever been a part of, maybe you've been on the bad side of this, where you have friends that are like, yo, man, I need to talk to you. You and I need to go get them. And you're like, whoa, you and I, you're bringing me into something. Or maybe you're on the other end of that and you feel attacked by a group of people who get a group of people to try to get you, and you're like, whoa, I don't deserve this. I want you to feel what Jesus felt, or what the setting might have been like in the moment here. He says they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, so now they're getting strategic. Listen, if you know lawyers, I mean, I'm not speaking for all lawyers, but the job description of a lawyer is not to tell the truth. It's actually to defend your client. So here you have two lawyers, two clients in a courtroom. The truth is somewhere, but both lawyers are defending their client's truth. Do you get what I'm saying? I'm not saying lawyers are liars, but what I'm saying is the role of the lawyer is to defend the client that they're supporting. So this group of people is like, all right, let's get the lawyer. And I'm sure it was a good lawyer, top lawyer here, because they know that the Sadducees had already been silenced. So they got together, that one of them a lawyer, and now here we go. We got the lawyer versus Jesus. Let's see how this goes. They asked him a question to test him. And he says, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Now this question was very strategic because they know there are 10 commandments. And if Jesus says one of them, they're gonna be ready to pounce on him to be like, well, what about these other ones? So if he says, thou shalt not kill, they'll be like, oh, but then you could steal? You know, these guys are mad petty, okay? So here they're trying to set him up. What's the greatest commandment in the law? Let's keep going here. It says, he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your mind. And he says these words that I just love the way he says it, because sometimes Jesus will say something and then be like, yeah, bruh, I got you. Like, you tried, but like, let me give you this Jesus truth flow. And I love it. He says, this is the great and first commandment. And now I could see the lawyer, the Sadducees, the groups here who are here to get on to Jesus to stop him, almost like ready. As he says this first one, I could see them leaning in their seats, ready to pounce, like he's gonna say one commandment, and we're gonna be like, what about the other 9? But I love it. He continues to say, and a second is like it. So here they ask him, what's the greatest? And he says, well, there's a tie. And they got to be like, come on, man. We try to get dude, and we can't. And he's over here. And this is what he says. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. I don't know about you, but there are people in my life, I've heard them say, man, I love God. But, man, I just keep to myself. I just be about my business. I'm just doing me. And I want to let you know what Jesus has told us. If you want to operate in the fullness that God has for you, if you want to operate in the fullness of God's plan for your life, you cannot just love God and not love others. You've got to love God and love others. Can I get an amen on that? Now, I know we could say that, but we really got to live this thing out. Matter of fact, I would go as far as saying, if you don't love others, you don't love God. Jesus is saying, guys, here's the most important commandment of all. With everything you've got, you have got to love God. You have to. But don't forget, there is another commandment that is as equal as loving God. It is a tie. Love your neighbor as yourself. I think about the cross, the literal cross. 2 planks, 2 pieces of wood put together. If you just have the vertical piece of wood by itself, then you just have like a plank in the ground that's part of this long fence, maybe. If the vertical piece of wood is all by itself, as you're driving through your neighborhood, if you see that plank, you're just like, that thing on its own, it's just the thing. It's just the plank. Then you have the other piece of the cross, that's that horizontal piece. The horizontal piece of the cross by itself is just an item that people use at birthday parties to limbo. You know what I'm saying? Like, by itself, it's a pull-up bar. By itself, it's just a plank that's going from left to right and right to left. By itself, if you see it on the side of the road, if you see it by itself, it's just something that you will step over or step on. But folks, when you put the vertical piece of the wood connected to the horizontal. You see an image that has been used for hundreds and thousands of years to kill murderers, to kill rapists, to kill thieves, and to kill Jesus. This is not just a piece of wood. Both of these things go together to make the cross of Jesus. Why am I saying that? You cannot just love God. We are in a season of community here at Saints Church. Can I tell you that it is our desire, our vision, our goal that you don't just love God? What could that look like? Well, I just go to church. Well, I love the worship, I love the preaching, everything else, I'm straight. Cool, you could be straight, but if you go to Matthew, Jesus says love God and equally, just as much as to love others. And you know what? I'm proud of our church. Do you know that already in just a couple weeks, we've got over 270 people that have signed up to be in a community group in New York City? That's awesome. And the number's gonna keep going up because people are hungry for God. They wanna know God, they wanna love God, and they wanna love others. And it's not just about loving the other person like in a way of like, I'm gonna do something for somebody. We just believe that life should not be done alone. And this isn't our idea. We just read this to you from Matthew. Jesus is saying, it's a tie. Look, I wish it was just one of them. It would make things a lot easier for me. I wish he was like, yo, just love God. I'd be like, that, cool. You know what I mean? But for whatever reason, he says to love God and to love others. Okay, love others, cool, I'm gonna do that. So what happens when the others are causing me to stumble? What happens when the others are ticking me off? What happens when the others are hard to love? What happens when the others are the cause of my pain and my trauma? It's real easy, Juan, to stand up there and tell me to love God and love others. You don't know my situation. You don't know how I grew up. You don't know my family. You don't know what my work life is like. What do we do when we're in a struggle? What do we do when we're in a tough season? How do we deal with the others that we're supposed to love equally as God? I love this quote that says, God has already prepared you to outlast your toughest season. God has already prepared you to outlast your toughest season. Listen, I'm no guru. I can't tell you exactly all the steps to make all the bad and the tough seasons go away, but I can tell you that we could trust God. We may not have the why behind the what. We may not have the clarity, but we can trust in the creator of the world. We can trust in the King of Kings. We can trust in the Lord of Lords. We can trust in the one who defeated death and is alive today. I can't tell you why, but I can tell you we can trust in the King. God's already prepared you to outlast your toughest season. We could open up this book. I love it. I told this to the students on Friday night. We can open up this book, the Bible, in case you're wondering what book I got in my hand. We could open this thing up and fast forward, flip to the end. God, how is it gonna end up after my tough season? What's it gonna look like at the end of this life? We can open up this bad boy and say that you and I, no matter what we're walking through, we win in the end. We have victory in the end with Jesus. There's another quote I want to show. I think I have it later on, guys, but go ahead and put it up there. It says, when God opens up the windows of heaven to bless us, Satan will open up the windows of hell to blast us. Anyone ever been in a storm before? Anyone in a storm right now? Come on, anyone in a storm? Okay. So then what do we do when Satan's blasting us? How do we operate? How do we act? How do we dive into this? Well, let's look at a storm that Jesus was in. We're gonna go to the book of Mark, chapter 4. Mark chapter 4 says this, on that day. I love that. I love how this starts because it actually starts horrible. But he says, on that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they look they took him and with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him, and a great windstorm, everybody say windstorm, arose. And the waves were breaking into the boat so that the boat was already filling. Check this out. But he was in the stern, in the middle of the boat, asleep on the cushion. My. We're gonna die, and Jesus is asleep. Make it make sense, Lord. They awoke him and said, "Teacher," they got guts to say this, don't they, Pastor? Like the way they talk to him. "Do you not care that we're perishing?" These disciples are going, "Don't you see we're gonna die?" This is exactly how I felt 2 weeks ago. I was literally on a flight, on the worst flight I've ever been on in my entire life. The last 30 minutes, I'm like, it's cool, we about to land, and that baby was boom, boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, and I was like dancing bachata on accident, hello. And so this thing was booming and going around, and the lady next to me is like, and I was like, I gotta be strong for her, I'm terrified. I'm like, and then the worst thing you could do in intense turbulence is look at the map where they're telling you where to go. Because the line that says that you're almost there, when that line has a curve and you're actually gonna go around the downtown city that you're trying to land in, I'm like, where are we going? I'm terrified. I feel what these guys were feeling on the boat. Like if I looked over and saw some dude sleep, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. We're gonna die. The Bible says he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. I'm gonna invite Chris to come back up here, if you would. Because this is powerful. This is a powerful moment. Here we have Jesus in the middle of this boat, sleep on a cushion. All the disciples are freaking out, feeling like it is their last day on earth because of how crazy the boat was shaking. And Jesus wakes up from being from being asleep, and he shuts the storm down. This blows my mind when I read this. Because if you fast forward in the New Testament or in the Gospels, Jesus later on tells his followers, when I'm gone, I'm gonna send you a gift of the Holy Spirit. And when I'm in heaven, all of y'all are gonna do way more things than even I did. And I'm like, okay, let's just start with stopping a storm. How do I stop the storm that I'm in? It feels windy. I feel anxious. You ever felt like that? If I'm gonna do more than what Jesus did, how do I just get to 80% of what Jesus did? How do I stop the lightning and the thunder in my friendships, in my family, in my finances? What happens when my coworkers are gossiping about me? What happens when something unfair is happening to me from friendships or just from the season that I'm in? The disciples are scared for their life. Jesus is asleep. This tells me, and this tells you, that having the opposite attitude gives you authority. You want the authority to stop a storm? Don't do what everyone else is doing around you. You want the authority to shut things down, to shut the wind down? Have the opposite attitude in the season that you're in. This is the part of the sermon that gets a little quiet, because this is the part that challenges you to make a move, to take a step. Having the opposite attitude gives you and I the authority. Yeah, but they saying this and they saying that. Good. You know what you should do? Don't say this and don't say that. Do the opposite thing. Yeah, but my community's causing this tension in my life, and they're bothering me, and I can't sleep at night. You know what you should do? Do the way opposite thing of what you see around you. I think of people like David who could have, killed Saul. He had an opportunity. You know what he did? He did the opposite thing. He just cut off a little bit of his cloak. I think about people in my life that I'm like, you are so godly. You deserve to get back at them. But they do the opposite thing. Guys, I don't want to be right. I want to activate the authority that Jesus has given me. How do I activate that authority? I have the opposite attitude in the season that I'm in. I don't know what your season is like, whether it's at work or in school or in your family or whatever, your friendships. But I want to challenge you, and I want to challenge myself. Let's take the opposite approach. If we look around and see other people doing A, B, and C, let's run to the other side and be like Jesus and be asleep while everyone else is angry and fearing for their life. Let's take the opposite approach in this. Because the storm's gonna come. See, I think that many Christians, this is just my opinion, I think many Christians are operating on like 70 or 80% of the full potential that we could possibly be operating in. And I think we're doing that because we're just doing what the world does. We're making decisions based off what we see on social media, or we're doing what they do, or if someone hurts us, we hurt them back. I don't believe that you fight fire with fire. Jesus had a storm, and he had the opposite attitude in that storm, and he shut that thing down. Let's not be people that fight fire with fire. Let's do the opposite thing. Whatever that is, that's gonna be different for all of us.